Welcome to Masters of Luxury, the man behind Jaipur Rugs, showcasing the beauty of Indian craftsmanship through hand-knotted rugs globally. Yogesh Chaudhary has shown remarkable entrepreneurial skills under his leadership. The company has diversified its product range to serve customers in over 100 countries worldwide today. Let's find out what makes this Indian brand a household name in luxury living worldwide today. Yogesh, firstly, thank you so much for taking time out today for Rob Report India from your extremely busy travel schedule. But thank you for having us at the Jaipur Rugs headquarters today.
It's an honor to be on the Rob Report. Thank you.
I'm not going to waste too much time and dive straight into the question that's been sort of mind-boggling, and I'm referring to the campaigns that Jaipur Rugs has been dropping over the last 2-3 seasons, where you place rugs in the most places where you would not normally see rugs at all. What is the story behind your iconic Jaipur Rugs campaigns over the last few seasons?
I think for the longest time, we always believed that marketing is one thing that segregates one brand versus the other, right? So obviously it's your story, but how you tell makes all the difference. So, we've been trying to create some cool campaigns over the last many years. I think the last few years at least have become some of the campaigns, especially after the onset of our new creative director, has sort of really been iconic. So the whole idea was to take a carpet and place it in an unusual setting, right? And sort of showcase the beauty very differently, right? So you see antique rugs, Rohan Bopana and our artisan playing, together on that. And, what we also did was we put a lot of hard effort in terms of just making sure that the campaign is very authentic. So like the tennis campaign, for example, we trained the artisan for about a month how to play tennis. So it was a real artisan taught how to play tennis. And when she played, then it was all real people. There was nobody in the campaign who was not a part of Jaipur Rugs. Only Rohan was, the star in the campaign that we got. So yeah, we try to make them very authentic and try to always link them back to our story, right? So our story is all about the artisans. It's all about craftsmanship. And how do you take somebody like Rohan, who's so well known, but still I feel he deserves a lot more credit, right? Then take a product like a carpet, which I think deserves a lot more credit, and you put them together, weave a beautiful story and let the magic happen. So that's been the overall thought.
I mean, seeing a rug on a ski slope, for instance, one can't, what was the thought process behind, of course you spoke about the tennis campaign, where the rugs were placed on the tennis court, which I think was the start of creating something iconic. But after that, you've dropped a couple of more. Tell us a little bit more on those as well.
Yeah, so typically a lot of these ideas come from people and where they imagine something and then everybody is like I have this idea or that. And the snow one specifically was Greg's idea, where he always wanted to do something with the snow, like with snow as a backdrop but shooting something. And there the idea was snow and then also the resort in itself. So we had some images inside the resort, but I think the snow ones looked so iconic that I think a part of the shoot got overshadowed because of that. But I think the idea was the same, to have a beautiful backdrop and create imagery which can actually inspire people, right? Which can inspire designers, where you look at it and you're like, oh my God, wow. I think it's difficult to achieve. You need a lot of right eyes and a lot of right team, good production to put it together, with obviously our creative director Greg's background. That is what he was doing. So that sort of becomes slightly easier when you know what you're doing in terms of the shoot and everything else. But yeah, I think the snow one has received a lot of international acclaim, especially in our design community. What I'm proud of the most is when a lot of people tell me that they want to come to Kashmir because they saw that campaign and they're like, oh my God, we didn't know India had such amazing places to snow.
Jaipur Rugs as a brand has been associated with some of the most iconic international labels, whether it's Chanel, whether it's Balenciaga. Tell me a little bit about the process. How did it start? I know, Yogesh, you've been responsible for the global expansion of the brand over the past many years. Tell us a little bit about that journey and what has been your aha moment in that journey.
If I go back maybe over a decade ago, working with some of the luxury brands was always like a dream, right? You're like, oh, one day, do something with them. Not to name just because of some of our NDAs. One of the top luxury brands of the world, they sort of came to us to sort of start making carpets for them that they could resell because they had heard about our story. That is when a sort of shift happened in my mindset where I said, these luxury brands are also looking for stories to tell. And the more we started to deep dive and we realized that it was so true, and that's when we started to really approach, a lot of the brands in the LVMH group and some of the other groups. And there was no looking back since then. Fortunately, a lot of the large luxury brands are our clients today. We do windows or stores or use their material to create carpets or different things. But it's taken a while, but I think it's put us in a very good space, and the luxury brands look at us in terms of getting inspired by the stories and how we tell, right? So obviously some of the campaigns, we've been invited by a couple of large brands again to do shoots with them. My Dubai store, many luxury brands have hosted events or dinners at my store because they've been inspired visually by how we build the store. The most amazing comment I heard was from the head of a luxury brand where they were like, we're so inspired by you that, we need to start learning a little more and doing more in our brand, which was great. And for them to come to us and say, we want to work with you, I think it's a great position to be in.
Tell me about maybe some of your favorite global projects that you've worked on in the recent past that you want to highlight today?
We work with the Leela Group very closely, and they've been either renovating a lot of their spaces or building new hotels. One thing I love about them is how they're trying to weave stories inside almost every product and spaces that they're building. They've renovated the lobby of the Leela Gurgaon, for example. And if you go to some of these spaces, you'll see a big difference from how they were and how they look today. So I really enjoy, I think, that side. But also in terms of another hotel, we did the Six Senses Fort Barwara. If you go there and look at the carpets, what they also did interestingly was they used our Manchaha collection where each piece is unique to sort of tell the artisanal story behind the piece. So, it's amazing how hotels today just don't want good design, but also stories behind the product that they use in the hotel. And I think for a brand like us, that resonates so much because we're all about the story, not just about the product.
Jaipur Rugs has always been known to engage, promote with the community, with the artisans, with the weaving folks in India, in Rajasthan and outside as well. Tell me a little bit about what is the process? How do you go about really kind of crediting where the due is needed? What is the process that Jaipur Rugs as a brand follows when it comes to working with the artisans of India?
The biggest differentiator of our brand has been that from the very first day, my dad actually went to the artisans directly. Typically in the carpet industry, there was an exporter, a contractor, a subcontractor, and then the artisan. Now, the artisan who was working the hardest was getting paid the least. And my dad realized this very early on. And what was happening is because there were a lot of layers and they were only interested in money, quality was getting compromised, right? He realized that going direct was very important. Also, what he did was very early on, he realized how important women were in this role, right? So he said the men usually were not so dedicated, committed when they were making carpets, but the women were very committed. They were making better quality. So in his initial years, he decided to focus on women to start making the carpets. And it was not because he wanted to empower women, but because it made better business sense, because they were more disciplined, they were better managers, they were making better quality compared to the men. And that's what we've done. And what has happened is because the women in the villages, most of the places have very limited opportunities in terms of earning, this becomes a game changer for them. So now suddenly when the women of the house has money, instead of spending it on alcohol, tobacco, gambling, she's spending it on better education, she's spending it on better utensils, better decor in the home, better homes. So it leads to a tremendous empowerment in itself, right? But other than this, obviously we have our foundation where we train, we do a lot of things with global organizations to sort of see how can we make the impact deeper in their lives.
As you said, that you sort of work with artisans directly a lot of time. Jaipur Rugs is of course known for hand-knotted rugs. That's the USP of the brand. Which to you personally has been probably one of the most challenging as well as fulfilling projects till date?
So we actually did a very large carpet for one of the royal families in the Middle East. This project was supposed to take over 2.5 years.
Can you mention which family?
Most of these families have NDAs, so we can't disclose. It was about 17 or 19 artisans working, and we had 2 shifts, and it took about a year and a half to make that carpet. In total, about 2 years to deliver it to the palace, and almost 40 artisans to be working on one carpet every day to get every detail right, to make sure that the carpet is straight and the colors are right and everything goes well for that 1.5 years. And constantly every few months you'll realize some or the other artisan has some problem. Somebody has a wedding, or somebody has to go somewhere, and somebody has a death in the family, and to manage that and to make a carpet that at the end looks perfect and comes out beautiful, I think it was quite challenging, but it was all worthwhile after the product came out.
What's in your vision board right now, Yogesh?
I think to put India on the global map.
Which you already have.
There's a long way to go.
What is the aim that you're seeking with Jaipur Rugs?
I think, see, India, everybody knows now that we can make good quality product, but can we design well, right? We're not known as the Europeans are known to design good products. The Americans are known to design good products. We are sort of like the producers, and I really want to change that, where we say that not only we make good product, but we make great designs as well. That's what we're aspiring. A lot of the campaigns, designs, etc. that you see are just sort of pointing and moving in that direction.
You work with a lot of designers as well who design for you. Tell me about some of those collaborations that you had, including with international designers that Jaipur Rugs has worked with. What is the process? How does it work?
So typically, we look for designers who have a certain viewpoint, right? So, for example, when you look at something that Vinita Chaitanya did for us, there's a collection called Indie Rose. It had elephants, and the Jaipur Chhatris, fauna and flora. Her design sense is very maximalist, right? So she bought this beautiful design. The one with Pavitra Rajaram, who was the creative head for Good Earth, she was inspired by all antique traditions, right? So she took 6 antique traditions and created a collection of 6 carpets, inspired by different traditions around the globe. Beautiful collection again. Internationally, we've done some more very interesting ones. So one in specific that I'd like to mention is Lorenzo Vittori. So this guy actually used to make sculptures, take photographs, destroys the sculpture, and actually sells the photograph. So his photographs were so colorful. So we got him to do a collection for us to design carpets. Now when he came, he's like, I don't like that the carpets are so flat. I want dimension. So he started to make these pieces with 2 foot, 3 foot long threads coming out of the carpets. It was so interesting because we, for the first time, started to look at the carpet differently, right?
Almost like an installation.
Absolutely. There's all one-of-a-kind pieces. One sits in the Armani Museum in Milan, to some in museum in Venice. So they've gone a lot of global places, and we've had some very nice collectors sort of collecting the collection. But most interestingly, it's given a very different dimension to us as a business also, right? To learn on taking somebody who's doing something so different, yet creating something so beautiful in the rug world.
What is the creative process that you follow when you green stamp a design, for instance, for Jaipur Rugs?
That's a very difficult one to answer. Because you have so many opinions. And the funny thing is that some of the collections where somebody is so sure how this is not going to work sometimes becomes a bestseller, right? So, but I think the key is to keep experimenting. We always say that internally that there is no good or bad design. It's how many people will actually like it is the question. Because sometimes, a lot of times when we look at designs and we tell each other that this doesn't look good and it's not going to sell, and suddenly we realize, oh my god, this is really selling, and then later you start liking the design itself, right? But I think we like to experiment. We produce a lot of new designs. We manufacture for a lot of global brands, furniture, carpet, luxury brands, and this blend of taking different designs, different techniques, we've realized also not only gives our consumer a broader choice, but also helps a lot of our B2B customers sort of explore the carpet world a little more. So I think I don't have a direct answer to your question, because you'll see sometimes we do very traditional antique inspired carpets, and then suddenly next day or in a few months you'll see something completely modern. The idea is that we just want to keep experimenting and build a very strong design language eventually.
Yogesh, you mentioned that your father started the carpet business in 1978. It was rebranded. Jaipur Rugs launched in 1999, 25 years later. How do you think the brand has evolved?
When we started and when we used to have dinner conversations, my father always said that he wanted to connect the artisan with the end consumer. And this is not now, this is from ages. So in back of my head, I always had this, that I want to fulfill his dream, right? He always said that I want the emotions of the customer and the artisan to be connected. I think when we started retail, that's when we were first time able to sort of realize that vision in some bits, right? Where sort of say that you have the whole value chain captured, and now Jaipur Rugs is one platform where the artisan is there and the consumer is there. And I feel that we've come a very long way. If you ask me 12 years ago, Jaipur Rugs would be sort of a brand that is well known at a consumer level. I would probably say no, but I think we've received a lot of love from our consumers, and our customers have actually done our marketing. People have talked about customers refer other customers, and they bring people in.
So word of mouth is your biggest marketing.
Absolutely. A lot of people ask me that they think we spend millions of dollars on marketing, to build the brand that we have, and to most people's surprise, I have to sadly tell them that, it's our consumers who really marketed us. And that's why we've been able to keep the pricing also very fair. So we built a very transparent model. Obviously we have products starting from the few tens of thousands going to the crores, but I think the biggest value is that we give full transparency on what the consumer is buying so that they can buy with confidence.
Yogesh, how do you deal with fast products, in the category of rugs, in the category of home decor?
I think this problem will always remain. As you start going higher up, today I was just reading recently that the amount of Louis Vuitton fakes versus the original Louis Vuitton, I forget, it's an astronomical number, like it's I don't know how many multiple times. So I think as you start becoming more aspirational, the challenge will start coming, but what also at the same time we're trying to do is try to build products where we not necessarily want every product to be 2 lakhs, 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs, right? We want a consumer to come and say, okay, in my bedroom, I don't mind buying a 10 lakh rupee carpet, but in the guest bedroom, I don't want to buy a 10 lakh carpet, do you have something that's 50,000 or 70,000? And we do. So, we're building a lot of products which are still high quality, yet don't break the bank, right? And that strategy has been working quite well. Obviously, you have iconic products at the premium end, but then you have very well-designed products with good quality, which are more affordable.
Rugs can make a statement in any home. As a connoisseur in that segment, what would you say a customer should keep in mind when one is picking up a piece like this for his or her home?
I always think that it's so personal that a lot of times we are buying either to impress somebody else or because we're stuck in saying that, these colors, I only want a certain color palette. I feel that the most beautiful homes I've seen in my life are where people have wanted and put things which truly they liked and they love. So my first advice is that, don't go with what your neighbor has. Enjoy what you're sort of putting in. I recently met one of our customers at their home and they had this beautiful large manchaha rug that they bought from us. And they said, when we bought this rug, we were so unsure if this will fit in with the color themes and this and that. But since we put it, this is like our most iconic piece. They said that the most amazing part about this rug is that every time we look at it, we discover new things in the rug. Because it's a mancha, so they're like, we never knew that there were fishes in the rug and there's, items of, there's trees and this and that. And I felt that rug is going to stay for them forever, right? This is when somebody comes to their home, that's the first story they want to tell to the people. And when you tell a story and you have something beautiful, even if there's a slight mismatch in the decor, I think it comes together very beautifully, So I'm a believer of that. I don't think everything has to be perfect. It has to resonate with, what you're doing. And as long as you like it, I think it fits in very well.
You're an avid traveler, Yogesh. What are some of the most iconic or beautiful or inspiring spaces that you have seen and has actually inspired you?
I get inspired all the time. I was in Sharjah and they've sort of restored some of their old architectural buildings into museums and hotels. And maybe it's not as well known, but when you go inside a hotel and you have this 3-foot narrow wide passage to go inside and you're wondering what's happening, and suddenly you go and you have the courtyard that opens up to an architecture that was built hundreds of years ago. I think that's very, very inspiring because you're saying that I don't want to modernize this completely. You take something where you took a space which was built for a large family and they live together, and you've converted that into a hotel and you tried to leave the architecture as original as possible. So I think it was very unconventional to sort of go in a very narrow passage and then sort of enter the reception of a hotel. And I think it's these kind of architectures that constantly keep inspiring you, right? Because they're not the norm. You don't have this grand reception as you walk in and a big lobby.
So there is an element of serendipity.
Absolutely.
Tell me about some of the brands or maybe designers who really have inspired you.
I have two sides to this equation. I think one is people like Sabyasachi who are so proud of what they do, refuse to customize a lehenga, for example, because they're like, this is what I've designed, and you take it the way I've designed it, or you go to somebody else, right? And he's willing to give up business, but straight true to exactly what he's built. Very difficult to do that as a business owner, to take that same philosophy to the whole world around. I think is incredible. At the same time, I'm very inspired by brands like Pero, where it's really about design and it's really about the craftsmanship. It's really about that we can make super high quality, and this jacket is not the 50,000 rupee jacket. This costs a few lakhs, but it is great quality and it is beautifully designed.
So Pero and Sabyasachi are two brands. Any international designers who you look up to for inspiration all the time?
The list goes on, but I think one brand that I think I'm always very inspired by in our space is called Restoration Hardware. So they come from the hardware products, right? And then moving into a home brand, and they came up with this very specific look. So as soon as you walk into the stores, you're like, oh my God, this is how I want my home to look. From a small brand, now they're a several billion-dollar brand, going global, getting into luxury yachts, building homes for people. And I think that's very inspiring, that when you have a very strong point of view, people will come to you. They'll buy the product and respect it.
I'll catch on to what you just said, is that the importance of a point of view. If I have to ask you, as someone steering Jaipur Rugs today, what is your point of view on the brand? What would it be?
I think we're very simply saying that it's craftsmanship, it's artisanal, which sort of, hopefully inspires or makes the consumer happy. So we go through this back and forth where we constantly say we should have a design point of view in the business. And I think what I've learned is that designs keep evolving, and we have a lot of global designers we don't have a unique design language in terms of the product, but we have a very strong language in terms of the brand, right? So we're trying to build the point of view of saying that the product is super high quality, it's artisanal, the craftsmanship is amazing, and then we give you a platter of designs to sort of choose from.
Now the whole world is looking at India, especially in the luxury segment. International brands who are coming into India want to go global with this whole Desi touch. What's your take on this? As a homegrown brand who's acknowledged and respected globally, what's your take on this?
I think there's good and bad. It's sad that an international luxury brand has to come and modernize or say that these chappals can be worth so much more, right? But the good part is that they're recognizing India, and I think that in the next couple of decades, we should see a plethora of amazing Indian brands who will go all over the globe. So very excited for that. I feel there's a lot happening. I think we just need a little more confidence to go global.
What are some of your favorite designs from? I know it's going to be a bit tough, but if you were to pick some of your favorite pieces from Jaipur Rugs today, what would they be?
I think I tend on the two extreme ends. One is the Manchaha, where each piece is unique, and there's some unbelievable
Tell us a little
pieces.
bit about Manchaha. It's just for the video. I know what it is, but yeah.
So Manchaha is a collection where the artisans are free to make whatever they want to make. The very interesting part about Manchaha is that the first carpet we made, IKEA wanted to put it in all their stores, and we're like, we can't do this because it has a lot of colors and we can't replicate this piece. Then the buyer of one of the very large American furniture chain came, and she wanted it for her own home. And I was thinking to myself that this buyer who's going and has access to the world's carpets, she can go anywhere and buy carpets, wants this rug woven by an artisan in a village put inside a home. And I've seen homes where Manchaha transforms, and I use Manchaha at our own home. And so I'm a big fan of using Manchaha rugs because they're very spontaneous. You move them around and they change the visual of the space quite quickly. At the same time, I'm also a big fan of antique rugs. So we have a large collection of antique rugs.
And do you source them from different parts of the country? How does that work?
Yeah, we source them from different parts of the world. I think we have a collection which represents over 60 or 70 countries around the globe. Looking at a antique carpet itself is one thing, but as soon as you put it in the decor and in the space, I think they truly transform the space.
What does luxury mean to you, Yogesh?
I think luxury is very personal. I think it's an emotion to me more than a product. I think it's a feeling, and the feeling can be different from the different people. I think for some people it's that I've arrived there. For some people it's the lifestyle that I want to live. To me, luxury is really about things that matter the most to me and are still aspirational, and I'm still able to sort of achieve or live with them.
If there is one parting statement that you want to end today's conversation with, what would it be? At a personal level or a professional level, what is that you're aiming to achieve in life?
I think in the next few decades, I feel with the history that we have the ability to create the best luxury brands of the world. So I hope that in the next 2 decades, we're able to say that some of the best, let's say, luxury brands around the globe, the craftsmanship brands around the globe, actually originate from India.
What's next for Jaipur Rugs?
Lots going on. Few more stores coming. We have some very cool things happening. The idea is simple, is to keep just building the brand from where it is and take it to the globe.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.